So what is the ExoSquad Archive?
I keep saying we.
It's the best thing ever.
So I'm Kevin Williams, and I am the creator of the ExoSquad Archive, and I'm here today to talk to you about that. I'm not 100% sure how it came across my path. 1993, I was in the 10th grade, so sort of be past like kid watching cartoons in the morning age, but I was still really into like toys and buying toys. I had a part-time job, so where a lot of my friends would be buying like t-shirts or concert tickets, I was buying toys still. And somehow I stumbled across the show first, and it just spoke to me. I don't know what it was specifically about the show, but it was amazing. The animation was better than anything that was on at that time. It reminded me of like the X-Men animated series that was on around, I think that came out around 91, 92, somewhere in there, but around the same time. Actually, Will Mineo actually came from the X-Men and over to ExoSquad, which is a little point of contention between the two animation houses, but and we can get into it later also, but the writers for X-Men wrote ExoSquad also, which is why both of those shows hold up today. But I don't know, the show was great, and I don't remember finding my first toy, but I remember the Ariel E-frame was the first one I got, and just immediately fell in love with how high quality of a toy it was, and just was hooked from there. And just tracked them all down since, as they went forward for the next couple of years as they were in stores. I kept buying them as they were coming out. And then after high school, I was still working, and like KB and Toys R Us, they started going on clearance because by 95, 96, the show was off the air. Toy line was pretty much done. So any stock that was still coming out was starting to go clearance. So then it became really cheap to get stuff, and that's also when the Robotech stuff started coming out. And I remembered Robotech from when I was a kid, and it being re-released under ExoSquad brand was very exciting. So I started scooping up all the Robotech stuff that I could get. And since I also wasn't playing with toys so much at that point, I had, without knowing it, a collector mentality that I would buy the toy, very carefully take it out of the box, look at the toy, play with it a little bit, but I wouldn't put the stickers on it. I wouldn't destroy the packaging. I would keep all the accessories and everything together. And after I was done, looking at it, playing with it, displaying it, back in the box, carefully stored away, and everything was kept in as best condition as possible, with no real long-term thought to it. It was just, this is how I want to keep these. I actually, from a childhood, was a G.I. Joe collector and had all of my toys from, all of my G.I. Joes from about 84 until, 94, 95 when I was in high school. Kept them all. And so I had that sort of baked into me when ExoSquad came around was, oh, I like toys, I want to keep these. But now that I'm older and I'm not going to play with them, I've learned from my childhood mistakes of throwing away packaging and boxes and all this stuff, that I wanted to preserve them just for myself. And I did. So and as I graduated high school, moved on as an adult, they kind of went into storage boxes. And as I moved through life, they moved with me. With no long-term goal in mind. It was very important to me to keep these things with me. So I kept all my G.I. Joes, I kept all my ExoSquad, a bunch of other toys, all my moves up from California up to Washington, back and forth. Anywhere I went in life, it was always like pack the truck, pack the car, drag all this stuff with me everywhere I went. It was a huge hassle. But at the time, I never really thought of it as like a hassle, or I just want to get rid of this stuff so I don't have to move it. It was just like, no, this is my stuff. It has to come with me. I have to hang on to these things. These are important childhood artifacts. These are important to me, but I don't know why. I just decided to hang on to them. The payoff to that, to jump forward a little bit, is once I got into my mid-30s, I'm now settled down, married, have a house, and have space. We ended up with a house that had sort of a little bonus room in the back that wasn't used for anything. So we fixed it up, turned it into what would probably be considered a man cave, but it's basically a toy room. And it became my own personal toy museum. So out came all my toys from storage. The G.I. Joes came out of storage. Some of my ExoSquad came out of storage. Most of it surprisingly stayed in boxes. My focus originally with the toy room was all G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe everywhere. I kind of put ExoSquad into the back of my mind for a long time. So this toy room develops during probably 2019 or so. Had a friend of mine, just a random conversation about toys. He was looking at the toy room. We got talking about this and that, and he mentioned ExoSquad, and I was like, oh yeah, I think I have like a complete collection. And he's like, oh my God, can I see it? I was like, yeah, sure. So I bring down these boxes and boxes out of storage, and we start going through stuff, and it just reignited the passion for it. I was like, I love this stuff, and I haven't seen it in years because it's just been in storage. And he'd asked me, he's like, do you have everything? And I thought, I was like, I think so. I don't know. And he left and went about his way, and a couple months went by, and I was like, do I have everything? I don't know. I started looking for a resource for basically a checklist of what exists in the ExoSquad toy line. Nothing really existed. Figure Realm is out there as a website, and as a resource for just about every toy ever made. They're kind of a good go-to, but they're like a basic checklist. Like you get to ExoSquad and it's like one photo of every toy. They're kind of small photos. The site has its own issues to deal with, and it wasn't a great experience, but between it and eBay and 3 or 4 other websites, I had to piece together an actual checklist that I made basically in Excel for every single toy and figure and box and whatever of ExoSquad that was made. And that just kind of got me thinking. I was like, okay, that's my own personal checklist. And in the back of my mind, the seed was planted. I'm like, man, I wish there was a better website that did this. COVID happens. So 2020 happens and the world shuts down. My day job pretty much dries up, and I'm sitting at home for months on end with nothing to do. And ExoSquad pops in my mind again. And I'm like, I need something to keep me busy. I'm gonna make the archive. I'm gonna get all my ExoSquad down, and I'm gonna start making I'm gonna make the tool that I wish existed. So it kind of started out as a very selfish endeavor, honestly, was I need this thing to exist for myself. So I'm gonna make it. Oh, it should have this, and it should have this, and it should have this, and I bet other people would like this. The more information I gathered for it, the more I wanted to share it with everybody else. I'm like, because it's in playing with toy fashion, it's as I gain information, it's look at what I found, look at what I found, isn't this cool? I want to share everything I keep finding with people that have that same interest. I don't want to keep any of this for myself. Over basically 2020 to 2021, I scoured toy stores. Anytime I did get to go on a business trip, my day job allows me to travel the country. So anytime I was in another state or another town, I would look for the local toy stores and just, what do you got? What do you got? And I would find a piece here and a piece there. And it turns out my original complete collection was about half. I was missing half. So over the course of a year, I bought the other half. And then at the same time, right now I got the ExoSquad toys to play with, and I have my own collection. That's where sort of the toy side started of it. And as the collection grew, I found some online communities through like Reddit and Facebook and Instagram and things like that, started sharing with them the archive, and they responded to it really well right off the bat. And they started feeding back other information like, have you seen this? Have you seen this? I have this in my collection, things I never even knew existed. And that's exactly what I wanted for the archive, was a community involvement, because I'm just one person. I can't find it all by myself. I don't have all this information about where the toys came from, how the show started. Like, there are people that have bits of information all over the place. So they've all started coming together. And we've been able to find variants and history and pre-production things. I have befriended a guy in Canada who's sort of offline, so he'll probably never see this. Right, I'll mail him a DVD. He was on eBay in the early days, in like late 90s, early 2000s, and he has loved ExoSquad from day one. So as the show was ending and the creators were dumping pre-production toys and animation things from the show, he was scooping it all up cheap just for himself, and he has literally built like his own private museum in his house, and he has been a wealth of information to the archive over the years. And then there's been collectors who were just like savants for it, who like there's a guy who just like has memorized the cartoon and knows like everything about every character and so I'll go to him when I have a question about, hey, what was the Neo scientist's name? I can't, and he'll tell me the whole history, that kind of thing. So the community has been fantastic for filling in the blanks where I don't know everything. I'm just the source to collect and house it at this point. But I love it, and every single day, probably sometimes twice a day, I refresh my eBay search or different online sales sites, or reach out to different people of, hey, any new information or what's new for sale. And every single time I'm on a business trip out of state, I'm still checking toy stores. I'm still looking for stuff. I'm looking for things that I don't know exist yet. So it can all go in the archive. And that's sort of where we are today, from just passion as a kid to I want to share all this for everybody.
Us 40-year-old dudes with beards, we love this stuff.
I've been very pleased to see how many actual like female fans pop up in the different like, Facebook forums and stuff like that. I'm like, all right, great, another girl, that's fantastic, that's great. I like, and the show had a lot of very strong female characters in it, which was kind of unusual for its time, but might have been a carryover from the writers writing for X-Men, which had strong female characters in it, coming on to write ExoSquad the same way, had at least 3, maybe more, pivotal to the storylines. They weren't just filler, female characters, and that's something to bring in the female audience to the show also, which was kind of unique to the show. It didn't just have the token female, which most cartoons did.
JT, we need suppressing fire down here. Coordinates Epsilon 263. Enough!
And has a very well defined background and family, and they get into her wants and desires and her character flaws, and she's very well developed as characters go, and that's kind of unusual. The show was great that it would actually get into sort of the characters' histories and personal lives outside of just getting in these mechanical machines that blow things up. What really resonates with me with the show is that on one hand, it's very colorful and very loud and explosive, which draws in your kids. It's a lot of action, a lot of things flying around, and a lot of things blowing up. And for a kid who maybe not quite grasp the subtleties of a war, it's, ooh, look at the things blown up. But on the other hand, if you're a little bit older audience, there's this really well-written dialogue and nuanced storytelling that goes along with it, and really heavy themes, to be honest, for what would be considered a kid's cartoon, to have these nuanced themes about war, and especially like a 2- or 3-sided war that doesn't have any winners. That's pretty heavy. And it also being a linear storytelling, that it wasn't just episode of the day, was very unusual. That drew me into the show as well, is that you were basically watching a serial program. You'd have your overarching story plots that would go the whole season. Of course, you'd have like your little mini threads that would go 2 or 3 episodes long, and then of course you'd have this is your plot of the show, this as show. But I mean that's pretty standard. But to see the story move forward week by week was great. G.I. Joe would occasionally do maybe like a 3 to 5 episode story, but they were mostly episode at a time. Robotech, I remember, was that first model. When it came to America, it was re-edited to be a serialized show, so that it told like a 12 or 13 episode story from start to finish. I'm by far from a Robotech expert, but I do know that it was taken from the Japanese source and heavily re-edited and chopped to kind of make sense to an American market. And I think that's probably the closest analog to ExoSquad would be that Robotech storyline. Yeah. And something we actually found for the archive is it's called the Show Bible, and it's all the written detail about the show that the writers would pull from, that would just influence their writing, so that they would know that, when Alec de Leon goes into battle, that he's from France and has these different characteristics, and that's what influences why he makes these decisions. You may never ever hear that or see that on screen, but the writer needs to have all that information. And when you said something about them interacting with one another, there's a section in the Show Bible that has, like JT Marsh, and a breakdown paragraph on how JT interacts with Alec, how JT interacts with Marsala, how he interacts with every single character. And then there's a breakdown for that for every single character, for how they interact with one another and what their personality traits are. That kind of information to me as a nerd, I love that kind of just minutia that goes into stuff. Like, you could talk to maybe the casual person and be like, look, I just like the toys. That's all I'm interested in. I don't care about reading this. Okay, it started out as when I found the Bible, it was 94 pages long. I've recently found additional information and started adding to it to fill in blanks and that stuff. It's now up to 275 pages long. And I love it. I love adding all this information into it, and that will be out on the archive on the 18th of September for anybody to download for free and just read it and take in all this information you want. That's what the archive is there for. That's also a key thing I want to point out is the archive is free. There's no ads. There's everything on there. You can download images if you want. You can download anything that's on there. Take it. It's not mine. You take it and use it. It's for all of us to share and read and see. Nothing. I mean, we may get stuff early and kind of hang on to it to clean it up or release it as a surprise at a certain date. But nothing that we have is exclusively ours and isn't shared.
Now let's take a look at some of the documents Kevin brought. This is by far the coolest part of this whole thing.
This is just a small portion of some of the documents that we recently acquired, and it's all pre-production materials. A lot of it is interoffice memos, faxes. This particular set of files comes from Ocean Studios, which was the recording house in Vancouver, and it was run by Wally Burr, which if you IMDb him, if you watched a cartoon pretty much between 1960 and like 2000, he worked on it. You'll see his name everywhere. So these came from Wally Burr's personal files. These were his. There are notes in here that have like handwritten notes on here that this is his handwriting. And so this particular file that we got included an audio tape. So this one had the audio tape of the voice actors auditioning for their roles, which was fantastic to hear, like Gary Chalk, who played Marsala, also auditioning for Admiral Winfield, who he did not play. So there's to me there's gold on this tape, but that's just the tape, and that's about 20 minutes long. And then you just have like these sheets that are they're just dumb like office memos, but it's just like the check-in sheets and which takes were used. Eventually a lot of this will get scanned and be put somewhere on the website. These are the audition masters. So when an actor would come in to audition for a role, they would be given, it's called a side. A side is just a portion of a script for them to read their character's lines. So these sides had a picture of the character that they were auditioning for, a brief description of that character's traits, and then it had their dialogue that they would read for that side. So these sides are what's read on that tape for each character. So this one's for Nara. I mean, there's one here for everybody, but I mean, like this one is for McKenna, who was one of the not admirals, but he was on the flight deck. Like this one's for Rita. So we have all those, and these are all on the archive. These will all be made available to everybody. And again, just more sound log. Like here's just notes on how each actor did. Like there's one here. Gary Chalk just says good.
It was here on this plateau, 50 Earth years ago, that the great Neo-Sapien uprising came to its end.
Just take sheets for like how many times different takes of the different ones were done, and then there's another note somewhere that says take 22 was the best one. So I mean, they didn't just come in and were like one and done. This one I thought was pretty cool. It's the sound log, but it also shows the effects that were added to the actor's voice for the recording. So whether it was pitched down or sped up, things like that. So there's one here for Gary Chalk, was slowed down 10% and the pitched down 15%. So that's how they would try and get the actual Marsala sound, by changing his voice. So what you hear in the cartoon is not his actual voice. It's been altered just a tiny bit to make him sound a little bit more alien. So to me, finding out that kind of information was enlightening. So I just get really excited about that. This is just a data sheet that just shows the time codes that go with the tape. And then the rest of these are just some office notes. These I thought were funny. Somebody at some point, so these are character sheets for like Amanda Connor and one of the Neos. And apparently somebody was bored in a meeting and playing around with a highlighter. And so they were just doing some coloring on the character sheets, maybe to kind of get an idea of what the character might look like in different costume colors. I just thought that was funny that they ended up in somebody's file. So like these are on the site. This is blue, this is paint. So somebody had like, this is clearly highlighter, but texturally, like this is paint. Somebody had a paint marker and was like that, just whatever's laying around in the office, that's what they were playing with. Character sheets were drawn. These were given to animators. These were used all over the show process, so that people would know what a character looked like from different angles. There's hundreds of these that we have added to the Bible. I couldn't really think of a better place to add them, so I put them in the Bible. So like E-frames and X-wings, and it is just pages and pages of character sheets of different vehicles from the show. So that's one thing we've added to the Bible. This one is backgrounds and layouts. And something interesting I think to point out is they all say Exo Force. Up until almost even in early '93, the show was still called Exo Force. But they found that it was too close to the comic book X-Force that was coming out. So they changed the name to ExoSquad so that there would be less confusion. But not all of, but the bulk of the pre-production material, the original script treatment, everything says Exo Force on it, which I just think is kind of a fascinating little tidbit. That's like your bar trivia. What was the original name of ExoSquad? Exo Force. And you'll also find things, this is well known, but you can see it on some of the documentation that we have on the archive. JT Marsh was originally called Mace Corbett. And even there's something we have in here, I can't remember, I think it was like John Corbett. Like even before Mace, he had a previous name before Mace.
Now Kevin, what toys did you bring for us to unbox and play with?
Some of the terminology that we've started using on the archive have just come from either me, from basic, this is what it looks like, or I've taken clues from social online groups and what the terms people are using. So I've brought we call it the flap box or the window box, and they're pretty self-explanatory. The flap box has the art, full panel art on the front, and it is a flap that flips up to reveal the toy on the inside. Those were all of the first series toys came in the flap box, which I think are the best because you get that full art experience. ExoSquad definitely on the tail end of package art, following definitely in the footsteps of like G.I. Joe, for that hand-painted, highly detailed. There's a lot of action happening on the box rather than just the toy itself. There's things going on. There's a scene happening, and you don't get that anymore. And I really think ExoSquad was on the tail end of that. Window box was the later releases, definitely a price-cutting decision. This is, we got to keep the line going. We got to get prices, costs down. So we're going to redesign the box so that's a simpler box with just a big window in it rather than the flap. That's much, it's less expensive to produce, but unfortunately it cuts out the bulk of the artwork, and it's just sort of pushed up to the upper left-hand corner. So I've brought the Pirate E-frame just to show off that one. I brought JT's E-frame in two different versions, actually. The window box, but also the Canadian box. Canada has a thing where their toy packaging has to be universal. So they have to pretty much have one design for all figures. I've never really gotten the answer to why that is, but you'll see it with G.I. Joe also. Sorry, that's the other thing I know a lot about, so I keep bringing it up. So you'll see like a G.I. Joe package, and it'll have like 3 or 4 characters on it, and they'll use that same package for all their figures. ExoSquad was the same way. They had a basic one piece of artwork, which I think is fantastic. It's the aerial E-frame versus the Command E-frame, sort of locked in battle on the front of the package, and that box was used for all of their figures in the flat box release. So you actually had to read the little box in the corner to see what figure was actually inside. You can also see one of the larger ones, which is Thrax's E-frame. This one particular, the pilot fell out, but he should be sticking out of the window right there. So you could see the pilot that came inside, but the larger, they're called light attack or space fighter E-frames, came in much larger boxes, and they had cardboard inserts, and there was, depending on the E-frame, maybe had a little bit of assembly to do with putting on like a windshield or something like that, but they came in much bigger boxes. Pretty much no plastic windows on those. Growing up, before I started really saving my packaging, like Marsala's box was a real big one, and that became the storage box for a lot of loose ones, because it was a big storage box. I've also brought some color variants, which I think are fun to document. A lot of the first run E-frames were put out very quickly before they kind of locked in the color decisions, so you will find like Phaeton's E-frame originally came out with gray claws. And Phaeton himself came out with his normal purple, but his sleeves were green. So right after those releases were put out in relatively small numbers, they lock in the final colors, like, no, we don't like this, we don't like that, after seeing it. So now Phaeton's E-frame has yellow claws and a lot of yellow highlights, and now his sleeves are yellow. That becomes the common running color for the rest of it. I've talked about the Phaeton, the Bronski, which usually shows his normal accessory colors are in yellow. I've also brought the one where the accessories are in green, missiles and all the sensors that are on top. For some reason, this one always seems to show up in Europe, specifically in Italy. I don't know that it's specifically designed as an Italy release, but that's where they always seem to come from. So we've just sort of dubbed it as the international version. If it's shown up elsewhere, we don't have that history yet. I've actually had quite a hard time tracking down old Playmates employees. We found some of the original toy designers, and we've had some great conversations with them. You can see on the archive some original concept art for what some of the E-frame toys would look like. So we've been able to find some of those, but actual people that have worked for Playmates back in the day that had some of the toy decisions, we've been having a hard time tracking them down to find out, because that's also information that I would love to get my hands on, is the why things were made, how things were made, where things were made. Like that's just stuff that's fascinating to me, so that's what I want to get my hands on. Other things I've brought are some Cyberview toys, custom little life-size power cell that I made, all kinds of little things in that. A laser disc, which I don't even have a Laserdisc player to find. I'll have to go to like a thrift store and find a working one somewhere, but I thought the artwork was cool. So there's 2 Laserdiscs. I've got one of them. Somebody gave me a really good photo of the other one so we could provide it the archive, which again, we call on the community constantly for the archive for like, hey, I'm missing this particular set of blueprints, or I need a high-res scan of these decals, and people provide, and the community has been amazing for supporting and providing things that are missing. We've even had people for like the Cyberviews are a good example. They are very rare. They were the last in the line of the toys to be made and are very low in quantity. Most of them didn't even get a wide release to the US at all. Most of them went to the East Coast, and that was about it. For those, we've actually relied on personal collections. We've had those people send them to the archive so we can document them and photograph them in all the ways that we need, and then we send them back, and we pay for all that shipping both ways. So like, there's no cost to them, and they just trust us, thankfully, and we get it from them and sent back to them in one piece, and we try and build these good relationships. So as we need stuff in the future, hopefully, I keep saying we, because there is another person behind the scenes. It's my best friend Scott, who does all of the art. So when we do merch for the website, so we do like collectible or stickers for the website, Scott is the forced designer for all this. When I started this back in 2020, he had heard of ExoSquad, but he didn't know anything about it. And I've been sort of forcing him to learn as he goes, and I'll be like, here's a toy, go draw. He's a very talented, he went to school for it, he teaches it, like he's an incredible graphic designer. I'm like his biggest cheerleader for what he does, and I pay him, which a lot of people, they'll have artists who are friends and they'll be like, hey, will you make me this or that? No, pay your friends if they're artists. That's a big deal, seriously. I say we because it is a collaborative effort. I'm constantly running ideas by Scott. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? I'm reaching out to the community for help for finding this and that. I have conversations offline with different people through email or different channels about different products. People have started emailing the archive email or through Instagram or Facebook, asking the archive questions about different things or feedback or advice on different things, and that has just been a heartwarming role to fill, to know that like people are coming to the archive as a source of information now. And I've learned so much. Like, again, not an expert. Everything I've learned has been a community effort, because I've picked up information from people who know way more than I do. Anytime somebody will ask me something and I don't know, I just pass that question right on to somebody else. Like, hey, what was this thing or that? And then I'll get that information back to somebody else. Then Scott is the other half of the we for because he's our designer. So one thing I do want to say about the merch that we sell for the website. A lot of the sources I went to and still go to for other toys, and I don't want to call anybody out by name because that's not cool, but there can be some miserable website experiences out there with pop-up ads, banners, bad photos, things that don't load. There's some awful internet experiences out there. And so I kind of took from everything that I hated from other websites, and I was like, I don't want that for this site. I want it to be clean. I want it to be ad-free, and I want all the content to be big and clear and as high res as we can possibly get it. And that gets kind of expensive for that hosting and that bandwidth that's required for that. So we came up with the idea for the pins and stickers and like the backpacks that we made, all the different collectibles that we make and sell for the website. 100% of that goes directly back into the website to pay for that hosting, to pay for acquisitions like the audition paperwork and tape and stuff like that. That had to be paid for. And so a lot of that money all goes directly to that material, which immediately goes right back to the website. So I do this all for free. I pay Scott because he's an artist. I probably don't pay him enough, but he does get something for his time. Anybody, like when we do these trading cards, for example, they have original artwork in them that artists provide. Those artists get paid. And then, there's production costs to make all that stuff. So the community, the ExoSquad community in funding the archive is funding these projects, funding future projects, funding future acquisitions. And it's super important that everybody knows that money is going to the archive and future archive things. Every September 18th is our ExoSquad Day. 2020 was our first one. We're now celebrating our third one, which coincides with the 30th anniversary of ExoSquad, which is crazy. That's 30 years ago. ExoSquad Day, September 18th. There's actually 2 original air dates if you look up the history, and I think it could be maybe like a soft launch or East Coast, West Coast kind of thing. It was either September 11th or September 18th. September 11th has its own kind of day reserved for things at this point. So we have chosen September 18th as the day to celebrate so that we don't clutter up the 11th with our nonsense. So the 18th is the day that we've chosen to choose. That's the day ExoSquad launched. And we just do a little celebration. We kind of ramp up to it for the week leading up to it by revealing some cool stuff. We do a charity raffle, which all the money we raise goes to the Gary Sinise Foundation. We did a lot of research into different charities and foundations, and the Gary Sinise Foundation came up at the top of the list for the percentage of the money you donate actually going to the people who need it. They have the lowest operating cost, and supporting veterans and that kind of thing. We kind of felt one is important, but also kind of tied into sort of the military theme of the show. So that's how that charity became chosen for that kind of different criteria. So we sell t-shirts and different merchandise and things like that, and all the proceeds from those sales go straight into the charity. And then we also raffle off different items every year, and all of the raffle ticket sales go right into the charity. This year we have 8 different raffles, and it's all things that are signed by Will Mineo. He was gracious enough back at New York Comic Con last November. One of my buddies back east had a whole bunch of stuff and took to him, and he's like, "Hey, would you mind signing something?" And Will, without even being asked, super awesome guy, he's like, "Yeah, give me all of it," and signed everything. And we're like, "Whoa, this is crazy." So all of it's going into the charity raffle, so people can get genuine Will Mineo signed stuff. Will Mineo was the producer of the show. Last year we had Jeff Segal signed items, comic books and stuff, and Jeff Segal is the creator of the show. And I've been in on and off conversations with Jeff over the years, and he's a really nice guy. He's actually developing a reboot for the show, and has shared with me some of the information confidentially that they are in a direction, the direction they're going with the reboot for the show. And I'll check in with him every once in a while, see how it's going. And unfortunately, it's just COVID slowed everything down pretty much to a halt. Currently, we're on a writer's strike. Hollywood is a very, very slow process to get anything done, going through legal hoops and all that kinds of stuff. So I believe what he's telling me in how long this process takes by looking at this old paperwork that I got from Wally Burr and his office, because some of it is dated as far back as 1989. And for a show that came out in 1993, develop a show and get it on the air. And that's probably when the wheels were moving quickly. Now wheels are not moving quickly, so, but it is in the process. It's not dead. And I'm very excited to know that, ExoSquad is coming back. What it's gonna look like, I don't know yet, but I support it 100%. I can't wait to see it. I hope it launches at least a new toy line. Even if it's remakes of the old stuff, I don't care.
Anything, please, anything.
Anything ExoSquad is great. And in the interim, our job is to keep the brand alive, keep people thinking about it, keep it in the the public knowledge, so people remember it all the time. When I travel the country and go to toy stores, I'll talk to people, toy store owners. Hey, do you have this or that? Oh yeah, I remember that. I'll give them the business card. Check out the archive. It's gonna jog your memory. It's gonna tell you everything you need to know. Oh, great. So, it's reawakening as a toy line, as a cartoon, just as a thing. I think people are very quickly remembering ExoSquad. It's nice to see the online groups grow steadily all the time with new members and new people coming on, like, hey, I just remembered this thing, or I found these old toys in the attic and it brought back all these memories. I hear those stories, I don't know, once or twice a month, and it's great. And I figured those are just the people who have found a Facebook group. How many other people are out there just finding stuff in their garage and aren't online, sharing it with a like-minded community. So I'm happy. We've teamed up with a very talented photographer that I found just through accident on Instagram, named Bradley Sugg. Goes by Matrix Quest, that I do know, who was doing some just fantastic ExoSquad photography. Just messaged him, we got chatting about stuff, and we collaborated on some posters, which we haven't done before. So we have some, it's a 4 poster set of original toy photography of these really cool ExoSquad scenes. Of the E-frames and characters sort of in action, kind of like you might see if it were like a catalog shot, but then it would say like Sega game coming soon, but it's just without all that. So we're doing those as a 4 poster set, just smallish, like 11 by 17, so you can still kind of hang them up, not fill up your walls with stuff. So those we're doing, and the proceeds from those are going to charity. And then every year we do a new t-shirt. Fans love having something to wear that says ExoSquad on it. So this year, again, an artist that I found through Instagram, Wandering Press is the name of the artist. And he did a shirt for us last year that was a very cool, just a black and white aerial E-frame drawing. So I approached him again this year, and he's doing the ground assault E-frame. And but we're doing the shirt in either a white shirt or a black shirt of the artwork, because I like black shirts. I don't really like a white shirt, but some people do. So we're just giving both options on that. So those are the 2 new things this year that we're doing. Slowed down on merch a little bit with the pins and stickers this year. Sales honestly slowed a little bit, so we've been left with a big backstock of things. But we'll be back at December. We'll have some new pins and sticker merch for people. If you liked the backpacks that we did last year, the Exo Gear, which was such a fascinating, fun experiment. To me, playing with G.I. Joes growing up, they always came with backpacks and guns and accessories that you could put on them. And ExoSquad figures were very articulated like G.I. Joes were, but they didn't come with all that stuff that you could put on them. And in the show, almost every character is wearing a backpack of some kind, or a helmet or something. While 1 or 2 characters like Maggie or Sean Napier, the backpack is kind of molded onto the toy, but not really. I thought it would be cool if we had accessories, kind of like the G.I. Joe accessory packs, where you could get just extra bombs and missiles and guns and helmets and stuff like that. So we came up with the backpacks. So we designed off of actual drawings taken from the character sheets that we had. The JT's backpack and Alec DeLeon's backpack, and then a third one was an original creation based in the style of the show, just to kind of fill it out. It was sort of like a rocket backpack. So we sold those as accessories. People loved them. We actually had to do a whole second run of them because they were received better than we anticipated. So the next thing we're working on is accessory pack number 2, which I don't want to talk about too much because I don't want to jinx it yet, but we're looking to up our game with it, where the backpacks were 3D printed, hand painted, and they worked fine as a kind of a clip-on accessory because they don't get too much handling or wear and tear. The next thing we're working on can be handled a lot more, so we're looking into actual injection molding, so it can be a playable plastic toy piece. and that's been a big challenge and an expensive process. So we're still trying to figure that out. And once we find a manufacturer, then I can move forward with sort of announcing what we're doing. And I don't know, maybe we may have to take it to like Kickstarter or something like that, which I hope not to. It's been fun to sort of self-fund and self-produce, everything we've done so far. We'll see how that comes, but we do have something definitely in the works. The designs are made. I was able to show them to you off camera.
It's awesome. You'll love it. I loved it. I'm sure you'll love it. It's awesome.
Share the love of ExoSquad. I have converted quite a few friends to liking the show in itself. Most people have either never heard of it or just remember it as a kid's cartoon. And it is so much more, honestly, it's so much more adult and not like you have to be like 30 to enjoy it, but I mean, it's a grown-up show. It's really well written and it holds up today. And I've converted a bunch of people into fans of the show. So if that's my takeaway is get your friends who haven't experienced it to watch it. It's free. It's currently on the Peacock app, which you can watch for free. All 53 episodes of it are there. Even if you only watch the first season, which is only 13 episodes, it's a great 13 episodes. And I think that's enough to convert somebody. Even if they don't get into the toys, they'll like the show. And I think that's my takeaway is convert your friends. They're gonna thank you for it.
Thanks to Kevin so much. This was absolutely a pleasure. Even if I didn't record it, it was just awesome to sit here for an hour talking to him, listening to him, having a conversation, and him sharing so much cool information and getting to see some of these documents, some of these rare toys firsthand. My collection is basic and it is awesome, but it is, the stuff off the shelf from the first wave. Be sure to go to the ExoSquad Archive, buy a pin, buy a t-shirt, do whatever you can to support. If the raffle's still going on as you see this, be sure to enter that. It'll help those guys out to sustain an awesome website, an awesome resource for people like me who want to make videos about stuff like this. I go there every time. I've been going there since it's been invented and I didn't even realize I have been. The photos are great, high res, really cool stuff, so much information there and more being added constantly. If you have anything to contribute in terms of rare stuff, information, please pass it along either through me to Kevin, reach out directly to the archive. It'll help them so much, and again, it'll help people like me who just love this stuff passionately. ExoSquad is my favorite show and my favorite toy line ever. That's not hyperbole, it is true. I love it. Maybe Star Wars, so maybe slight hyperbole there, but it is my favorite TV show ever, of all time, and one of the most influential on me as a creative person. So what are your memories of ExoSquad? Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and let me know what's your favorite toy and what's your favorite character from the show. Thank you so much again to Kevin. Thank you for everyone who watched this, and be sure, as Kevin said, convert people to becoming fans of ExoSquad.
Pay your friends if they're artists. That's a big deal, seriously. The more you know, right? Or something, launch the E-frames, something like that. Pay your artists, launch your E-frames, right?